Welcome to Cold Pines, where every trail has a story, though some should never be told. Thanks for joining me. Get comfortable, and let's dive into the first story. I've hunted the same patch of backwoods in northern Idaho for going on 20 years. Thick timber, quiet valleys, long stretches where your footsteps are the only proof the world still exists. My cabin is a mile off an unmarked road and another 2 miles from a nearest neighbor, if you can call a shack with no electricity a neighbor. I go there every November for the late deer season, mostly for solitude. Some years I don't even bring a tag. I just sit by the stove, listen to the woods breathe, and let the world shrink back down to something human. This past year didn't feel human. It started the first morning after I got there. I woke before dawn, the way I always do, and stepped outside to get firewood. The air was cold enough to sting, and the frost was thick on the ground. That's when I noticed the tracks. They were about 30 yards from the cabin. Fresh, clear, pressed deep into the white crust. Bare footprints. Human shape, but wrong. Each one was at least 18 inches long, the toes splayed wide like a hand. The stride between them was enormous, a good 4 feet. They looked deliberate, like something walked through without hesitation, without concern for how exposed it was. I froze. I've seen weird things in the woods, deformed animal prints, double tracks when hooves slide, but nothing like this. I crouched beside one and placed my glove next to it. My entire hand fit inside the ball of the print with room to spare. The depth of it suggested weight, massive weight. Maybe 600 pounds. Maybe more. I followed them for maybe 20 paces before stopping. They went straight through brush thick enough that I normally have to turn sideways and push through. Whatever made them walk through chest-high branches like they were grass. Some of those branches weren't just pushed aside. They were snapped clean in half, thick as broom handles. I backed away slowly, refusing to turn my back on the tree line. The woods were too quiet. No birds. No wind. Not even the occasional far-off crack of freezing limbs. Just a heavy, thick stillness, like the forest itself was holding its breath. Around 10 that morning, an old local named Harris stopped by. He usually comes once a trip to check on me. He's somewhere between 60 and 100, built like knotted driftwood, and always smells faintly of pine tar. He's got one of those faces that looks permanently baked by wind, like leather left out too long in the sun. I told him about the tracks. He stopped chewing the tobacco in his cheek. How far from the cabin? Couple dozen yards. He spat into the snow, shaking his head. Shouldn't be that close. An elk? A moose? I said, half joking, hoping he'd laugh. He didn't. He never looked at me, just into the trees, narrowing his eyes like he was reading something I couldn't see. Nothing out here is feet like that. I laughed a little, but he didn't. The longer he stared into the woods, the more my skin crawled. He looked worried, and Harris was not the type to get worried. Then he said quietly, "If you hear 3 knocks after dark, don't open your door, and don't answer back. It ain't meant for you." Before I could ask what the hell he meant, he nodded once, climbed onto his ATV, and putted off down the trail, never looking back. I figured he was messing with me. Harris has that kind of humor, dry, borderline insane. But that night, as I sat by the stove reading, I couldn't shake the image of those massive tracks circling too close to the cabin. I kept feeling like I needed to look over my shoulder. Sometime around midnight, the noise came. Not loud, not even particularly strong, but deliberate. 3 knocks, slow, measured, on the wall outside, right behind my bed. I didn't move, didn't breathe. Even the fire seemed to dim, as if the air itself tightened around me. The knocks came again, this time from the opposite side of the cabin. 3, evenly spaced, like something pacing around me, testing the walls. I grabbed my rifle, holding it the way a drowning man holds a rope, and crouched by the stove until dawn. I didn't sleep at all. My eyes stayed locked on the front door, waiting for the handle to turn. When the sky finally lightened, I forced myself outside. No footprints. No drag marks. No sign of anything. The woods, however, were different. Heavy again. Watching. I could feel something just beyond the tree line. waiting for me to make sense of what I'd heard. I told myself it had to be the wood contracting in the cold, or maybe Harris playing a joke. Anything but the truth I was starting to feel in my gut. The next day, I hiked deeper than I normally go. I needed movement, needed to remind myself I wasn't trapped by whatever was circling me. The woods were colder than usual, and the air felt wrong, like it carried weight instead of wind. Every sound seemed muffled, like the trees were swallowing noise instead of echoing it. Around noon, I reached a part of the forest I'd never explored. Older trees, thicker undergrowth. Everything was coated in a damp stillness that made each step feel too loud. My breath came out in clouds that seemed to hang in place instead of drifting. That's when I saw it. A dead deer hanging 10 feet of a tree, impaled on a broken branch like someone had lifted it and dropped it onto the spike. Its ribs were cracked open, but nothing was eaten. The eyes were missing. The body was frozen stiff in an unnatural twisted shape, legs pointing in opposite directions like it had been torn apart before being displayed. Whatever left it there wanted it found. I felt eyes on my back, and every instinct screamed to leave. But I couldn't move, not yet. There was a smell in the air, faint but unmistakable. Wet fur, old blood, and something musky, like rotten leaves. Something predatory. I backed out of that clearing slow as I could, rifle raised, scanning every shadow. When I got back to the cabin, there were tracks again. Same huge bare feet. This time they circled the cabin once, then stopped at the front door, and beside the door, pressed into the wood, were 3 indentations. Knuckle marks, like something had rapped on it with enormous fingers. The wood around them was splintered, as if the strikes had been harder than I realized. I called Harris on the radio. He didn't answer. That night, the tapping didn't wait until midnight. Just after dusk, as I was loading the stove, the knocks came again. 3, same rhythm. But this time they were on the door itself, though it shuddered with each one. I raised a rifle, pointed at the handle, and stood frozen, every muscle in my body locked. My ears rang with my own heartbeat. Then a voice spoke, low, rumbling, almost like someone trying to imitate human speech without knowing how. Letman, every hair on my body stood up. It wasn't a voice meant for human ears. It didn't sound like a request, more like a mimicry, an attempt, something trying to copy what it thought I might respond to. Another voice responded from deeper in the woods, something between a howl and a moan, a second, then a third, all answering each other, communicating. I backed away from the door until I hit the far wall, keeping the gun trained forward. The knocks came once more, harder this time. Something scraped the doorframe. Slow, dragging claws. The boards bowed inward under the force. I remember thinking the door wasn't going to hold, that I'd see a massive hand punch through at any moment. But it didn't. Something wanted me scared. It wanted the door intact. It wanted permission. I didn't sleep. I didn't blink. I waited for morning, praying the door would hold. At sunrise, the knock stopped, and something walked away. Massive, slow footsteps crunching through the undergrowth, moving back toward the tree line with deliberate, dragging weight. I ran outside, ready to sprint to my truck, and nearly collapsed. All around the cabin were tracks. Dozens of them. Some smaller, some larger, far larger. The ground was churned up like a stampede had passed through. Branches were broken 10 feet up. My trash cans were missing entirely, ripped away so violently the metal brackets were bent. In the snow near the tree line, I found something half buried. The lid of one can, bent nearly in half. When I finally made it to my truck and turned the engine over, I saw Harris standing at the far edge of the trail, not waving, not smiling, just watching. His face was pale, and for the first time since I'd met him, he looked genuinely afraid. He raised a hand, pointing back toward the forest. "You shouldn't come back," he said. "Not this year. Maybe not ever." I wanted to ask him what was out there, what those things were, but he just shook his head, eyes never leaving the trees. "They ain't ours to understand." I left without packing, without even looking back. I drove until I hit pavement, and even then I kept checking the mirrors, convinced something was following me through the trees. Occasionally, I thought I saw a movement, something tall stepping between trunks, but I couldn't be sure if it was real or just leftover terror. That night, back home, exhausted and half delirious, I crawled into bed and promised myself it was over. But around 3 a.m., I woke to a noise outside my house. 3 knocks, slow, measured, on the siding near my window. I didn't look. I didn't breathe. My chest felt too tight to move. There was a faint exhale, like breath fogging glass. When the sun came up, nothing was there. But in the frost on my porch, melting in the morning light, were 2 enormous footprints. Bare, human-shaped, wrong, and spaced exactly 4 feet apart. Story 2. I never use a buy into local stories. The ones old-timers told with lowered voices and half-smiles that never reached their eyes. Growing up around hollow pines, you learned early that every adult had a tale, a warning, or a superstition tied to those woods. My uncle's was always the same. Don't let the forest learn your name. He told me the pines could listen, that the hollow wasn't just a place, but something alive, something hungry. I laughed it off for years. It sounded like small-town camp fear meant to keep us from messing around in the tree line after dark. Then came the summer I decided to test it. It started as a dare. My friends, bored and restless, wanted to see how far I'd go to prove the legends wrong. Walked the old logging trail past Miller's Creek. They said, bring back something from the burned mill foundation. Easy enough. I'd hiked deeper parts of the wilderness alone before. Besides, the fire that destroyed the mill had been 50 years ago, long enough that even the rumor of ghosts should have burned away. I went alone. The trailhead looked smaller than I remembered. Narrow, overgrown, the pines leaning inward as though trying to hide it. Their branches rattled despite the still air. I told myself it was just the nerves talking. Half a mile in, I came across something strange, a small pile of stones arranged in a spiral. Not like a fire ring, more intentional than that. I nudged it with my boot, and a wave of cold washed over me, sudden and unnatural. I froze. The woods were dead quiet. Not a bird, not a bug, just my breathing. I should have turned back. Instead, I stepped over the stones and kept going. The deeper I went, the more wrong everything felt. The trail narrowed until it barely existed, swallowed by undergrowth. But there were signs of recent movement. Branches bent, pine needles brushed aside in a way no animal would do. Then I found a tree with deep, spiraling gouges carved into it, too high up for any animal. And as I leaned in to trace one with my finger, something snapped behind me, a footstep. I spun. Nothing, just trees. Then another step, and another. It circled me, slow and deliberate, crunching through the leaves. I raised my voice, telling whoever it was I had a knife. It didn't stop. It didn't speed up. Just circled. When I couldn't take it anymore, I bolted down the trail. The footsteps followed for a stretch, then faded away. Only after a few minutes of running did I realize I hadn't heard them behind me, because the forest had gone silent again. I continued for another hour before reaching a fork in the trail I didn't remember. The left path looked newer, clear of debris. It led to a cluster of ancient cedars. Something about the way they stood. They formed a shape almost like a doorway. And at the center of that doorway was a man. He stood perfectly still, angled weirdly, like he was leaning forward but frozen mid-fall. His clothes were wrong, old, outdated, like something from the 70s. His face was shadowed by the branches. I called out. No response. When I took a step closer, he moved, but not like a person. He slid behind one of the trees without a sound. Not walked, slid. I felt every instinct screaming at me to run, but my legs didn't listen. I walked toward the cedars, each footstep heavier than the last. When I reached them, the man was nowhere. No tracks, no disturbance in the pine needles. But the air was colder now, and the trees seemed to lean a little closer around me. Night fell fast in the forest. My flashlight flickered just once, but it was enough to remind me how dark the hollow could get. I was planning to turn back when I saw a faint shape through the trees. A cabin. It leaned sideways, roof half caved in, windows black as pits. I don't know what compelled me to step inside. Maybe I thought I'd find another hiker. Maybe I just needed shelter. Or maybe the hollow wanted me there. The door creaked open before I touched it. Inside, the air was heavy, suffocating, like breathing through damp cloth. The walls were carved with scratches, some shallow, some deep. Names were etched among the marks. Dozens of them. Some I recognized. Locals who'd vanished over the years. Then I saw the journal. A thin, weather-worn notebook lay on the table, open to a page smeared with dirt and something darker. The last entry read, "It looks like a man. It sounds like a man. But it ain't one. If it learns your name, it follows." I slammed the journal shut, and something inside the cabin breathed. Not wind. Breathing. Slow. Steady right behind me. I bolted out the door, so fast I nearly tripped. The forest erupted in whispers, real, distinct words, rising and falling in a language I didn't know. I sprinted until my lungs felt like glass shards. The trees thinned. The creek came into sight, and I didn't stop until I reached my truck. I locked the doors, shaking violently, and peeled out a clearing. The road out of Hollow Pines is long and winding. After 10 minutes, I saw headlights cresting a hill far behind me. At first, I thought it was another car. Then I realized something. The lights didn't bounce. They didn't sway with the road. They just glowed, steady and level, like two unblinking eyes staring down the asphalt. Every turn I made, they followed perfectly. I sped up. They sped up. I slowed. They slowed. Never gaining, never falling behind. The chase lasted all the way into town. But when I pulled into my driveway and turned off the engine, the lights vanished. No car, no engine, just the echo of my heartbeat in my ears. I didn't sleep that night. For the first 3 days, I told myself it was stress, that I imagined it. But the whispers didn't stop when I left the woods. I heard them in my backyard, in the attic, in my dreams. Then came the shadows, always just outside the window, always the wrong shape for a person. 2 nights ago, I walked into the bathroom and saw handprints on the mirror, long, thin fingers ending in points. I wiped them away. Minutes later, they were back. Yesterday, I heard a voice outside my bedroom window. It said my name, quietly, like it had always known it. And this morning, I saw footprints in the snow outside, human-like, bare, leading up to my front porch. They didn't lead away. I'm writing this now because I need someone, anyone, to know the truth about the Hollow Pines. My uncle didn't lie. The forest is alive. And once it learns your name, it doesn't lose interest. Something followed me out. Something old. Something patient. Right now, as I'm typing this, I can hear scratching at the window again. Slow, deliberate, like it's taking its time. I'm not going to look, because I think if I make eye contact, it'll show me its real face. And that's when it'll finally come inside. And that's all we have for this time. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the stories I shared today, please like and subscribe. And remember, fear grows in the quiet places.